Okay. Wel, prynawn da, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Croeso'r cyfarfod yma yn Cyngor y Sir yn Brynbiga. My name's Tudor Thomas. I'm the chair of the Taxi and Regulatory Rights of Way Advisory Committee, and I will be chairing this meeting of the said body this afternoon, 23rd of February 2026. And obviously all actions will come through the chair, whether you're in the body of the chamber or whether you're joining online at home. We'll go to the agenda, and the first item is apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, there's apologies for absence from councillors Jackie Strong, Dale Rook, Sue Riley and Christopher Edwards.
Okay, thank you. So those are noted. Secondly, any declarations of interest? Is there anybody who has any declaration of interest, either here or online?
Tony Eason also sent his apologies.
Yes, sorry. Another apology. Councillor Eason gave his apologies. No declaration of interest. If something does arise, if somebody feels that they have an interest, then obviously you must declare it through myself. Third item on the agenda, and it's the substantive item on the agenda today, the Highways Act 1980, section 110, Public Footpath Diversion Order, Footpath 1 Usk, and that is at Usk Athletic Club. And just for the sake of people watching in online, a number of the committee, I think 4 in total, actually went to the athletic club this afternoon with the Deputy Rights of Way Officer, Mr Gavin Pugh, and we've walked the path and the diversion, the current path, and then the proposed path, so that we're clear about that in our own minds. I've checked with the solicitor who's with me here today, Julian Saunders, and I've made the decision that only people who were present this afternoon for the actual site visit will be allowed to vote. So if you're not able to attend the site visit, then you will not be allowed to vote. And we are quorate. I think 3 is the quorate number. We were actually 4. So that's the way that I intend to run the meeting this afternoon. So I'll hand over now to Rights of Way, who will take us through the presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to thank you for attending the site visit and for attending today. I'm the Countryside Access Manager for Monmouthshire County Council, and with me today is Gavin Pugh, who's the Assistant Rights of Way Officer. He deals primarily with these legal orders. Today we have a PowerPoint presentation for you, and a full report and copies of all the maps have been made available to you and to the general public on our council's website. I'd also like you to introduce you to Richard Ray from Legal Services, who will guide you through the legislation and to remind you of the requirements as per your training. Sorry. Richard is making the decision. You want me to? Sorry, this afternoon you will have, as a committee, need to consider the legal tests and decide whether or not the authority should make an order to divert footpath 1 Usk. Making of the order enables the public consultation to commence rather than concluding the process. The council can only confirm the order if it is unopposed.
Thanks, Ruth. So in making the decision, the committee is acting in a quasi-judicial capacity. Decisions should only take into account the statutory tests and objectives. The product of the consultation that Gavin's carried out must also be taken into account. So the decision should be based on evidence, and you should be satisfied that the application meets the statutory tests. So order making is a two-stage process. For a diversion order under the Highways Act, there are separate legal tests to satisfy for the making of an order and then for its confirmation. Once an order is made, it's subject to public consultation and is advertised, and the public may make objections and representations. If any objections or representations to an order are made and not withdrawn, the Council may not itself confirm the order, and if it still wishes to see it confirmed, it can refer it to the Planning Inspectorate or PEDU for confirmation. The inspector may only confirm the order if it's satisfied that the test for confirmation is met. So, under the Highways Act, a two-part test should be met to allow the authority to make an order. The new path must join highway to highway and must be substantially as convenient to the public. A diversion order has the effect of extinguishing an old path and at the same time creating a new path. A Highways Authority can then create and extinguish paths under Section 119 if it is in the interests of either the landowner or in the interests of the public. It doesn't need to be both. So under the Act, various tests have to be met to allow the confirmation of an order. These are primarily that the new path must not be substantially less convenient, so that's subtly different to the making test, and with regard to the effect which the diversion would have on the enjoyment of the path to the public. The effect on any land served by the existing rights of way and the proposed third path should also be considered. Finally, the committee should consider the material provisions of any rights of way improvement plan that's been published by the authority.
Thank you. On the 24th of March 2023, a public path order application was received by Monmouthshire County Council Countryside Access Service. It was made by the Committee of Usk Athletic Club to divert the public footpath that runs across the main cricket pitch, then across the adjacent playing field and on through two further agricultural fields. Here is an illustrative plan overlain with aerial photography of the proposed diversion of footpath 1 Usk. The solid black line is the existing alignment of the public footpath, and the dashed black line is the proposed alignment of the diverted path. The route is a section of the nationally known Usk Valley Walk, and it initially runs behind the tennis courts, then is moved away from the playing area in the Roger Edwards field, and then takes a direct route through the agricultural fields instead of being angular and looping around a small agricultural building. A pre-order consultation was initially undertaken in September 2023, and an objection to the proposal was made by Miss Alison Ivin, a councillor on Usk Town Council. The objection was against the moving of the path from a grass surface across the sports field to a stone dust path because the stone dust surface can make wheelchair use more difficult. To address this, Usk Athletic Club agreed to widen the proposed path at the rear of the tennis courts to incorporate a metre-wide grass path next to the stone dust path. They also agreed to make wheelchair accessible inclines at both ends to ensure appropriate wheelchair accessibility. This resulted in a revised proposal being sent out in March 2025, which included the changes to address the initial objection. I sent out consultation emails to the 15 consultees in 2025, as detailed on this slide. 14 responses were received with no objections, and some included positive replies. There was one objection from Miss Ivin, and I will now present details of the objection to the newly proposed order to allow consideration of the relevant points. I will read the objection as it is the objection as provided in full from the person objecting. Thank you for addressing some of my objections by confirming that you will upgrade the kissing gates to wheelchair accessible ones at points G and J, and they're the ones that follow on through the fields and are outside the scope of the objection today, to be stipulated in the amended schedule, which it has been, and to amend the specified width of the new length of footpath along and behind the tennis courts from 2 metres to 3 metres wide to accord with the description set out in your covering letter of the 10th of March, to be stipulated in the schedule. That approach is appreciated. That has been done, and that additional metre is the width of grass path that has been requested. The person objecting then says, regrettably, I do still have concerns that the revised footpath, as outlined in our discussions. The current footpath on the cricket field is highly used and is a level and open environment, benefiting from natural surveillance and overlooking. It feels open and safe. The ground is flat and allows for those who have less mobility to survey the ground and pick their steps. The footpath is highly used as it offers a unique experience where we have no parks to offer an alternative. Given the number of users, there are a high number of users at the older age group who value the level and safe environment which is not replicated elsewhere in Usk. Moving the footpath to the back of the tennis court takes away these attributes. Both current and proposed diverted footpaths lead onto the rougher ground of the Roger Edwards field. A number of users stay on the cricket field to avoid the rougher ground for confidence of walking and because of high use and overlooking. The route does not feel isolated. It feels safer. Even with the ramping at either end of the diversion where it runs behind the tennis courts, the diverted route does not have the same attributes and the rougher ground at the top of the ramping, making the transition of ground gradient harder for some existing users. For both of these reasons, my view is that the footpath should remain on its current route at the edges of the cricket field where it is an accessible and much used and valued recreational route. As a secondary point, it is also in my mind that the planned pump track on the Roger Edwards field will take its key access for cyclists along the same route as the diverted route of the footpath behind the tennis courts. Whilst I appreciate that the pump track does not have planning permission yet, the Town Council have been informed that the planning application for the pump track is imminent. In my opinion, it is prudent to consider both applications together, as the planning application is so proximate, and I'm advised that it is key to the pump track to take its main access over the route of the diverted footpath. Rather than sequential applications which could result in priority to the first in time, and knowing of the pump track planning application, I believe that it would be sensible for the footpath diversion to be considered in isolation, but alongside the pump track application. Your letter of the 10th, the planning application actually refers to the planning application to build a cycle pump track at the Usk AC site, and meaning that the specification of the path proposed at the rear of the tennis court be altered from the original proposal to either a 3 metre wide path made up of 1.5 metres of stone dust path and 1.5 metres of grass path with a 1 in 20 gradient at both ends, or B, a 3 metre wide path made up of 1.5 metres stone dust and 1.5 metres of tarmac path with a 1 in 20 gradient at both ends. Given that your covering letters refers to the pump track planning application, and that the specification has been drawn up with that use in mind, then there would seem to me to be enough clear indication of intended share use of the diverted footpath in the future. This intention of shared use should not be removed from consideration of the footpath diversion, because the footpath diversion is considered ahead of the pump track application, when that pump track application is clearly in prospect and in mind. Taking that point forward, I am concerned at any future shared use, pedestrian and cyclist, of a highly used footpath contained within fixed vertical boundaries formed by the tennis court fence and a football field fence. Government advice is moving away from shared surfaces, and I am concerned that the negative impact on the pump track proposals if the footpath is diverted, resulting in an insoluble problem later on if it is essential to the pump track to use the same surface. Obviously, if the footpath becomes used by cyclists, then use by pedestrians, particularly those less able, will be negatively affected. If the footpath is diverted, I foresee future conflict between competing users with a limited width space. This reinforces my view expressed above that the footpath should not be diverted. My response is that the objection is fundamentally concerned with retaining the current footpath alignment and resisting the relocation of the route onto the proposed new alignment. The reasons for the objection have been outlined so far. In determining whether to make and subsequently confirm this order, the committee's considerations should focus on whether the relevant legal tests are satisfied. MCC countryside access officers are of the view that the proposed route provides a significantly safer and more accessible alternative to the existing footpath. The new alignment runs behind the tennis courts, thereby distancing users from the sports ground and machinery sheds. It also follows a constructed, more weather-resistant foot surface, making it more usable throughout the year. For these reasons, the proposed route can reasonably be considered more enjoyable for the public. The objector's preference to retain the current alignment does not address the safety and usability concerns that formed the basis of the original application. The concerns raised regarding potential use of the proposed path by cyclists are not relevant to this particular order. This order seeks only to divert public footpath rights, meaning rights to pass and repass on foot. A public footpath does not confer any legal right of way for cycling, and this situation would remain unchanged on the proposed alignment. Any future proposal to upgrade the route to a bridleway or a cycleway would require a separate legal order. Such an order would be subject to a separate path order involving its own pre-order consultations and public scrutiny in accordance with the legislation. Only if a multi-user path were formally proposed in the future would the concerns raised about the cycling become relevant. I've also inserted a further slide here. This plan shows active travel future routes in red. These are defined as new routes that the local authority proposes to create in the future, as well as current routes that are planned for improvement to bring them up to the standards. This is a proposed active travel walking and cycling route that shows that if a pump track were ever built at the site, then the route from the pump track out to the road would be the most likely route used to access it, not the route suggested by the person objecting along the diverted footpath. When Usk Athletic Club were made aware of the contents of the objection, given they had gone to some lengths to address the previous objection, a representative, Mr. David Harding Smith, a member of the Usk Athletic Club, provided a response to the objection, which I'll read now. It says, I've addressed each of the points in your email below, but thought it would be helpful to set out the 4 key health and safety concerns that are behind our proposal to redirect the path. That's Usk Athletic Club's intention. These are as follows. Safety of path users. Many people that use the existing path have very little understanding or knowledge of cricket. They often do not pay attention to what is going on around them, or watch for the ball as they walk along the side of the ground. Our first 11 are now playing cricket at the highest level of club cricket in the country, and the ball gets hit very hard. We are concerned that walkers could be injured as they walk along beside the tennis courts, particularly if they're not paying attention to the game. We have already put high netting in place to protect the tennis courts because cricket balls have been hit into the courts. Slip hazards at each end of the path. Over the course of the winter, the gateways at each end of the path become extremely muddy and slippery. As these areas are part of the playing surface, they must remain grassed, and so pedestrian-generated mud is unavoidable. The proposed diversion has or will have a hardcore surface at each end of the path and along the full length of the tennis court, as a walking surface will be safer underfoot. I'm afraid the numbering should read 3 and 4 here. Walkers crossing the entry-exit point for groundkeeper machinery. The existing path crosses the entrance to the 2 groundskeepers' garages at the far corner of the ground. During the summer there is a constant flow of ride-on mowers and automated heavy rollers. While every care is taken at present, it is obviously not ideal to have pedestrians in close proximity to such machinery. There is also the issue of people wandering around the field when mowing is in progress, which is not ideal. And dog fowl. We have seen an increasing number of dog walkers using the area, and despite signage around the ground, many people let their dogs off the lead, don't pay attention to what the dog is doing, and don't clean up when required. You'll be well aware of the potential health issues linked to human contact with dog fowl on a sports field. This has become a significant problem. It goes on to say, these are the primary reasons we support the diversion of the path behind the tennis courts. It will address all of the above concerns, and from a health and safety perspective, we don't see any other workable alternatives to mitigate these risks. In terms of the points raised in the objection you received, I have set out our thoughts on each below. Current path is overlooked, providing natural surveillance. There are only 2 or 3 houses that overlook the ground, and these are 150 to 200 yards away from that side of the ground, a pretty minimal level of surveillance. The ground is flat and allows for people with less mobility to use it. The path behind the tennis court is flat and hardcore, so it does not get muddy in the winter. The 2 ends of the path will have groundworks done to achieve a slope of less than 5%.
Gavin, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to stop you there, and nothing to do with your presentation, but I'll hand over to my legal representative now. Our legal representative wants to declare an interest.
Yes, apologies for the intervention. We will need to take a 10-minute postponement. There's a legal issue which has arisen, which I need to take advice on, and so we will come back in 10 minutes.
Okay. So it's now 20 minutes past 2. We'll reconvene at 2:30. So if people just want to have a break, and if you're online or if public are watching, obviously you're more than welcome to come back in at 2:30. We'll recommence the meeting and we'll live stream at 2:30. Thanks. Can we go back live stream, please, Wendy? The issue that's arisen, Julian Saunders, our legal advisor today, suddenly realised that he plays cricket at the club.
If I can explain, so in regards to the declaration of interest, I am a playing member at Us Cricket Club, and even whilst I'm not a voting member in today's committee hearing, I think it's right of me to declare that interest as a legal advisor. So the options going forward is either an adjournment of today's hearing, or we proceed with Richard Ray to be the person to answer any questions in respect of the application that's been made.
I was going to ask, how do people feel about this issue? Councillor Neil.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My own view would be thank you for declaring it, that I think it's appropriate that we continue. If it ran into a particular problem, we could take a different view at that stage. But until we've reached that stage, I would have thought it's wise to continue with Richard's backup.
Yeah, thanks. Any other thoughts or views? You know, my view as chair is that we continue the meeting. As you know, we've done the site visit, we've gone halfway through the report, and the Deputy Rights Away Officer has taken us halfway through that. If any issue arises, then we could ask for advice from Richard, but also, if needs be, we could go to Geraint Edwards, who is the Deputy Monitoring Officer for the Authority for Monmouthshire County Council, if there was a particular legal point.
Yes.
And I think in terms of being transparent, I'm grateful to Julian Saunders for having brought this to our attention. But I think at this stage, we continue. And if there is a contentious legal issue, then we'll refer to Richard, and if needs be, to Geraint Edwards, Deputy Monitoring Officer. Is everyone happy to continue on that basis? Yes? Okay, we go back to the report. Gavin, I'm afraid you've got to carry on. Thanks.
If you can just give me a moment to find the appropriate...
Page 17.
Thank you. So this is the response from Usk Athletic Committee to the person making the objection, and it goes on to say, these are the primary reasons we support the diversion of the path behind the tennis courts. It will address all of the above concerns, that was the safety concerns, and from a health and safety perspective, we don't see any other workable alternatives to mitigate these risks. In terms of the points raised in the objection you received, I have set out our thoughts on each below. Current path is overlooked, providing natural surveillance. There are only 2 or 3 houses that overlook the ground, and these are 150 to 200 yards away from the side of the ground, a pretty minimal level of surveillance. The ground is flat and allows for people to be with less mobility to use it. The path behind the tennis court is flat and hardcore, so does not get muddy in the winter. The 2 ends of the path will have groundworks done to achieve a slope of less than 5%. Some people already opt to use the path behind the tennis courts over the winter because it is easier to walk on and less of a slip hazard. There are no other parks in Usk that offer an alternative. There are several other parks in Usk, a well-used river path, the Usk Island and the adjoining Roger Edwards field, which the proposed diversion will still lead walkers to. Moving the paths removes these attributes. We believe the points above suggest otherwise. The loss of a minimal level of surveillance is more than offset by the health and safety issues that are addressed by the proposed diversion. There is rough ground at the far end of the proposed path. The rough ground at the far end of the proposed path will be levelled to a 5% incline and the existing dirt replaced by hardcore that will be safer underfoot in wet conditions. This work will be done in the next week or 2. And officers county councillors who attended the site meeting will see that that has been done. The current route is not isolated and so feels safer than the proposed route. The existing route is potentially hazardous, particularly when cricket matches or practice is in progress. The proposed route addresses all of the potential hazards. After sunset, each route is equally lit by the tennis court floodlights when the courts are in use. If the tennis lights aren't on, each route is equally dark. If a walker feels unsafe on either route, why would they be walking to the field at the far end of the path where there are no lights, no houses, and even more isolation? My comments then are, the objection submitted in this case does not assert that the proposed diversion would make the footpath substantially less convenient for the public, which is one of the legal tests that's to be considered. Rather, it suggests that the proposed route may be less enjoyable and less safe. This is a subjective consideration and must be assessed in accordance with the legislative requirement to consider the effect which the diversion would have on the public enjoyment of the path or way as a whole. While the proposed route may feel less open in comparison with the existing alignment, it nevertheless provides a demonstrably safer alternative, benefits from an improved and more durable surface, and offers greater accessibility. In my professional opinion, these factors collectively contribute to an enhanced level of public enjoyment when the path is considered as a whole. Accordingly, the proposed route meets the statutory criteria that should be taken into account in assessing this diversion order. And just as a reminder of those who attended the site visit, the picture on the left of here shows a view from the start of the existing footpath across the field, although from this point it goes towards the Millennium Building, and then the second photo on the right shows the route the path takes alongside the existing fence of the tennis courts. The second photo, the two photos here show the route through the car park to the proposed path, and then the alignment of the proposed path to the rear of the tennis courts. It's important to note that the fence on the right of the right-hand photo would be moved out a metre to create a metre-wide grass path, following the initial objection to the path diversion, which was that the grass path across the other side of the tennis courts was better for wheelchair accessibility. The Athletic Club have agreed to move this fence to make sure there is a grass path adjacent to the made path at this location. These are the safety issues that the Athletic Club are saying they wish to try and mitigate, and that is the photos of the machine sheds that are the current alignment of the public footpath runs immediately in front of. This shows the base of the furthest tennis court where there's evidence where cricket balls have hit this fence and caused damage to it, and it's the speed and the velocity of those cricket balls heading into that direction across the alignment of the current public footpath that concerns the Athletic Club. There's also photos here of where the public footpath currently runs after running past the machine sheds, where at both ends of the path it gets far more muddy than it would if it were running over a made path as per the diversion proposal. Sorry, I lost them. The other considerations in line with the Rights of Way Improvement Plan and legislation I must ask you to consider are Welsh Government guidance, MCC documents and legislative acts. That includes the Welsh Government guidance for local authorities on public rights of way, Monmouthshire County Council's policy for public path diversion and extinguishment orders, the Environment Wales Act, the Equality Act, the Active Travel Act, and the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. And there are a number of slides now to cover these areas. Welsh Government guidance for local authorities on public rights of way, October 2016. There is a link to this document in the report pack that was sent out to the committee and is available to the public online. It contains advice about all aspects of rights of way. Much of this is general and relates to the legislation that has been covered. The paragraphs detailed here are very useful in respect to the relevant decisions to be made in this case. Whereas and they state, where convenience may be interpreted as meaning ease of use, enjoyment can take into account other factors, such as the views to be enjoyed from the path or way. It is possible that a proposed diversion may be as convenient as the existing path but less enjoyable. If so, when coming to a conclusion on expediency, the decision maker would have to balance the applicant's interests in having the order confirmed against any amenity lost to the public. Conversely, a proposed diversion may give greater public enjoyment but be substantially less convenient, perhaps because the diverted route would be less accessible or longer than the existing pathway. In such circumstances, the diversion order should not be confirmed, since a diversion order cannot be confirmed if the path or way will be substantially less convenient to the public in consequence of the diversion. This means a new path can be less enjoyable, but this has to be balanced against the applicant's interest and the safety issues against any loss of amenity to the public. If though the new path is substantially less convenient, even if it gives greater enjoyment, then the order cannot be confirmed. Consideration needs to be given as to whether the new path is more or less enjoyable and whether it's substantially less convenient. Monmouthshire County Council's own policy, as set out in its application and guidance pack for the public path diversions and extinguishment orders under the Highways Act 1980. And this states that when making a diversion order, one must also consider how it will affect the public use of the path and other nearby paths as a whole, how it will affect the land served by the existing path, how will it affect land it is diverted through, whether the diverted path is less convenient to the public, if the order is in the best interest of the person or persons named in it, the effect the proposals will have on conservation needs and biodiversity. If this is unknown prior to consultation, then this usually would be dealt with through inclusion of the authority's biodiversity officer and or NRW. Both for the county councillors, both the MCC's biodiversity officer and Natural Resources Wales were consulted regarding this path order and no objections were received. Monmouthshire has an application and guidance pack for Highways Act orders. Many aspects of this are already covered by other guidance, but this brings them neatly together. It mentions the Highways Act legal tests, the ability of the authority to recover costs, the need to consider how it will affect public use, the land served by the existing path, whether the diverted alignment is less convenient, conservation and biodiversity. Not all of the policy requirements are relevant to this proposal, but I believe it complies with all of those that are. The proposed path would run on a far safer and more accessible route. The Environment Act Wales 2016. The Environment Act's aim is to help secure healthy, resilient and productive ecosystems for the future, while still meeting the challenges of creating jobs, housing and infrastructure. Public Rights of Way has its own biodiversity action plan, and the environment and biodiversity matters have already been considered as part of the pre-order consultation. MCC Biodiversity were consulted about the proposed path order and had no objection. The Equality Act 2010. The aim of the Equality Act is to legally protect people from discrimination in the workplace and in wider society. In respect of public path, this legislation relates mostly to the eliminating discrimination by way of accessibility. Good quality services, avoidance of limitations such as steps, stiles, gates and steep gradients. And this proposed path is similar in length and offers greater accessibility. The use of gaps in place of gates and the installation of full mobility kissing gates in place of existing stiles achieves this. Active Travel Wales Act. The Act requires local authorities to exercise their functions so as to promote active travel journeys and secure new and improved active travel routes. This means MCC must consider the needs of pedestrians and cyclists at all stages of its decision making. Active travel is defined as travel by bike or foot to enable the public to go about their usual daily business, such as going to the shops or work. It does not include leisure. And my comment is that the existing path and the proposed path are similar in length, and the proposed path offers greater accessibility. The proposed path is on a made surface, offering greater access to some users with mobility or sight issues. And the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act 2015. The Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act is about improving the social, economic, environmental and cultural well-being of Wales. It requires public bodies to think more about the long term, work better with people and communities and each other to look to prevent problems and to take a more joined-up approach. And my comment is, as previously mentioned, if the order is successful, the proposed path will be made available. The current path runs across a wet field and the new path offers an improved surface for most users. The proposal should encourage more people to walk the route, thereby improving health, well-being and reducing emissions and costs. And so finally, a public path order application was received and MCC's Countryside Access believed it was expedient to pursue an order in the interest of the applicant. It is the view of MCC Countryside Access that the legal tests applicable to the making and confirmation of this order are met. The path is from highway to highway, is not substantially less convenient, and is as enjoyable or more enjoyable than the existing path. It is therefore recommended that the committee authorise the making of the order and its confirmation if unopposed.
Yes, okay, so we'll go over. We don't have anybody left online, I don't believe. So we'll go firstly then to Councillor Martin Newell, who's got his hand up.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Gavin and Ruth, for the presentation. And as an ex-cricketer, I've got a bad back now, an ex-chairman of Monmouth Cricket Club and ex-player, my biggest concern when I was chair was the safety of people visiting the ground when we'd have MCC staff there with machinery, and it's quite heavy plant. And also on match days, you'd have walkers, because it was on Village Green property, we'd have walkers walking straight past the cricket ground. And if I was watching a game of cricket, I'd be aware there was a game of cricket and I'd have my head focused on. Now, sadly, non-cricketers, non-tennis players, whatever, aren't aware of their surroundings or as they're walking past. And I've seen many people over the years be hit with a cricket ball. One really nastily got hit in the head. So my overriding view is here. I haven't visited the site and I'm familiar with this cricket ground. I was stood at the fielding position, which is known as Cow Corner, which is a deep long on, which is 45 degrees to where the batter is. And that the ball can be travelling at well over 100 miles an hour by the time that ball gets to the boundary. And if you're not paying attention, especially the way the game's played now, someone's going to get hurt very, very seriously. So as an ex-cricketer, my overriding factor visiting the site today and reading this report was the safety of visitors, walkers, and those not familiar with the game of cricket. And it's my understanding, I've got two questions for the Chair. It's my understanding that the ability for spectators to watch a game of cricket on a Saturday afternoon is not affected by this order, because of course, if they're watching the game of cricket, their eyes are focused on the game, and then they're aware of what's going on. And I think I'm correct there. And the other thing, from a legal point of view, whilst making this recommendation, am I right in assuming that we do not consider the pump bike track, because that's only a proposal for a planning application? And could you just confirm on the record that we're not to consider that? We're only just to consider this. And if there's any future application, that's a separate matter. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Gavin, would you like to come in?
Yep. So in respect of the your first point, it's absolutely right. There will be access open to view games as normal when they're being run. This, though, prevents people who aren't engaged at all in the cricket from walking close to where that cricket is played, and it's those safety concerns that initially prompted the application, and those safety concerns that this path order seeks to address. You're absolutely right with the second element, though. If the pump track application never gets to a point of a successful planning application, then consideration may be given, and it would only be under application from somebody, a member of the public, that they may want to try and seek cycle rights over the current route. That, though, would be subject of a completely separate legal order and would have to be considered under all the legislation, a lot of which is similar to this, to upgrade it to either a bridleway or a cycle track. Currently, all that's being asked by the application and all that should be considered in this case is whether the rights to pass and repass on foot transfer from the current legal alignment onto the proposed legal alignment. And just as cycling along the current route would be illegal on a bicycle, so it would be on the new alignment. And as I showed on the, if I can remind you of the slide that shows the active travel route. So this slide here shows, although this isn't currently a public right-of-way, this route here comes in over the bund, goes through the site where the proposed pump track will be, and then goes out through the car park onto the road here. So the proposed active travel route for cycling and walking does not, and currently has not considered that as the route to the river. So my suggestion would be that if the pump track were built, they would look to try and acquire cycle rights from the road into the pump track that way. But if they did try and if they did want them along the route of the footpath we're considering today, like I say, that would be subject of a new application, a new order, and the usual pre-order and public consultations.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thanks. We'll go now then to Councillor Jade McKenna.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Gavin and Ruth for your very thorough presentation. So my children used to use the tennis, cricket and junior football pitches for many years, so I'm familiar with the site. However, I am not declared an interest today because they're no longer members of the Usk Athletics Club. But as a parent at the time, I shared the same concerns raised by the Usk Athletic Club with regards to dog fouling and the danger of cricket balls. Indeed, I was pleased to see during our site visit today that the field commonly known as the Cabbage Patch fenced off to prevent dog fouling on those junior football training pitches. This was a real problem for our junior players and coaches. I will be supporting this application today, but one thing I would like to raise is the safety of pedestrians going across the car park. I know from experience how busy this car park gets. So, for example, at some times of the year, you might have tennis matches, cricket matches and football matches all going on at the same time, all with visiting teams as well. So it does get very busy. So my question is, can it be conditioned or can advice be given to the applicant that the pedestrian path is marked by way of paint on the surface of the car park to make the path clear and to ensure a vehicle does not park across the path and therefore obstruct wheelchair or pedestrian access? For example, just earlier as I parked in the County Hall car park, I noticed there was hatching across the on the floor painted with a pedestrian symbol to make it clear where pedestrians could walk. I feel this would make this part of the diversion clearer and safer and prevent obstructions by vehicles for all users. Thank you.
Yeah, Gavin, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, thank you for that. So I think that would be appropriate to mark on the proposed route, if the path order is successful, the alignment of that path. That will give clear indication to people who would perhaps not be aware that there is a new path there, and to try and ensure that it doesn't get blocked. There is also, though, there is an offence to obstruct the highway. So if anyone were to intentionally block the public right of way, if it were to transfer onto the proposed alignment, there are powers that can be used to prevent that, even if it is a temporary obstruction, not a permanent obstruction.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Gavin. Go to Councillor Alistair Deal and then the last.
Thank you, Chair, and again, thank you, Gavin, for the presentation. And it was also, I think, very helpful indeed to be so thorough today that you, as a team, you were able to walk us around both the existing path and the proposed diversion and answer all the questions that we had. So thank you for that. I was very impressed by the thoroughness of that, and hopefully everybody involved in the process would feel the same way. My thoughts really are that I'm very sympathetic to the issues of mobility for anyone who may struggle with that, and so I was looking for any concerns that might arise there, and I was actually very satisfied that the proposed diversion diverted path is actually better in my view in many ways. I was concerned about the safety issue. Councillor Newell's referred to that, and I think Councillor McKenna's made a very sensible point about how that could be assured within the car parking. I was extremely concerned about the issues of being hit by a cricket ball, very problematic indeed. And I was not persuaded about the issue of surveillance in the dark, because it's an unlit area, and in any case of the order of 200 metres away from just 2 or 3 properties. So they didn't seem to me to be persuasive. And overall, saw the responses by the club as being very appropriate, taking the matters very seriously. So I find myself very persuaded indeed that the proposed diverted route path is appropriate and actually, in my view, better. We could talk about many of the issues, but I think those are the key ones. My question is, why on earth it's taken so long for us to get here? And is this something, 3 years nearly, and is this not something that would we have the flexibility as a council to look at how to make progress on such relatively straightforward matters more speedily in a world where we're continuously bumping up against the need to move more quickly in all sorts of ways. Taking 3 years to get to this stage seems just extraordinary. And that's not criticism, because I know how your hands are tied in so many ways. I just wonder if there is the potential for us to look more within MCC at what flexibility we may have to progress things more speedily on matters of this nature. But thank you.
Okay. Any comment or no? There's no question. There's a really. Oh, at the end, in terms of the speed of the application coming through, that it has taken 3 years. Gavin, would you want to make a comment?
As you can appreciate, I try and expedite all the path orders that I am the case officer for. Unfortunately, with public rights of way cases, unlike other legal processes that the council is responsible for, if an objection is unresolved or unwithdrawn, then it has to go to committee for a decision. My problem in this case was both because there was an objection to the initial consultation that went out in September 2023, that getting responses from the person making that objection and getting the details of that, then putting that to the athletic club, who had to wait for committee meetings and so on. That took about a year to get to a point of resolution. I then went ahead in early 2025 with the next set of proposals to pre-order consultation, and there's always statutory bodies, user groups and so on that I have to wait for replies from. And again, I spent many months trying to find full details of the objection from the person making the objection, who wouldn't provide those in a timely manner, all of which then has led to this sort of unfortunate delay. I don't think there is anything, in answer to your question, that MCC can do specifically. It's unfortunate that it has taken this length of time, but if the person making the objection doesn't engage with the officer, then that is something that can delay and frustrate the expedition of the expediting of these cases.
Thank you, Gavin. I suppose my point would really be that if an objector doesn't engage, whether an MCC could consider that would be cause for consideration of a plan to move things forward within a set period of time. Otherwise, we just can't make progress on so many matters. I don't know whether that's something that we could take away and look at.
I agree absolutely with the principle, but I think from talking with the sort of professional rights of way, or the Institute of Public Rights of Way, so the sort of body that provides a lot of instruction information, because of the nature, basically one objection has to be, however significant or insignificant, has to be resolved before the case can be progressed, and that's unfortunately the situation that remains. And I can't think of anything specifically that MCC could do to change that practice, I'm afraid.
Great. My question is not contingent on my view of the overall issue. It's just one that I ask separately.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Richard would like to come in on this point.
Yeah, I just want to expand on what Gavin was saying about both the internal processes that Monmouthshire's got on path orders. While this one's taken 3 years to come to committee, in the meanwhile, Gavin's, I don't know how many path orders have actually gone through in that time that haven't been objected to, or the Rights of Way team have worked hard to resolve those objections just so we don't have to come to committee. And nearly all the orders that come to committee with outstanding objections then have objections at making stage, so they have to be submitted to PEDU for confirmation, which then expands it another 18 months or 2 years. That's why they spend so long trying to resolve objections before this stage, and that probably explains why this one's taken so long.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you everyone for your inputs today, and particularly to Gavin Pugh, the Deputy Rights of Way Officer, who's obviously prepared the report and taken us comprehensively through it. All of us here in the decision-making process this afternoon visited the site and walked right round, looked at the proposed new right of way and also the existing right of way, and could appreciate what was being proposed. We've had all the evidence. Looking at the papers, all the consultees who were asked have not objected to a change. From my perception, if anybody wants to correct me if I'm incorrect, all the legal aspects have been addressed by the athletic club. There is one objector, and obviously it's quite right and proper that people can object, but it would appear that the objections have been answered in terms of issues such as the safety and well-being of people using that path. Councillor Newell raised the issue about high-speed balls. Somebody's hit with a very hard cricket ball in particular, and there could be serious injury. Also the issue, when we walked this afternoon on the existing path, of how muddy and slippery it was. I had Wellingtons on, and I didn't feel, but I'm quite a confident walker, but I didn't feel terribly confident walking through the mud, plus the safety issues of grass cutting machinery, tractors, etc., moving back and forth. And it's obviously an area that adults, but also adults with children and small children use, and probably older people who might not be so secure. The fact that the athletic club have taken on board the objectors' issues and have extended the path, so there is a grass path and there is a hard gravel path for the new right of way, which would make for, I think in the committee's opinion this afternoon, for better traversing by somebody who is in a wheelchair. And obviously wheelchair movement is difficult, but I think we all thought it would be far more difficult over a muddy field as opposed to compacted stone and dust path. So I've not picked up any issues this afternoon from listening to the evidence that the Deputy Rights of Way Officer has given, and he's given a balanced view as to why we should accept it. So I see no other reason now other than to go to a vote and to make a decision. So I'll just read the recommendation. I think Richard might want to say something as well, but the recommendation is, having regard to the relevant legislation, tests, guidance and policy, that the Licensing and Regulatory Rights of Way Advisory Committee authorise the making of a diversion order for footpath 1, Usk, under section 119 of the Highways Act 1980, and to confirm the order if no, it says if no objections were received. One objection was received, but obviously we have considered that. So I'll hand over to Richard now, if you want to. You don't need to add anything. Can we now move to a vote? We're obviously aware and we're sympathetic to that objection, but I do think the mitigations have been put forward. So let's go to a vote. coming up? Oh, mine hasn't.
Up in the chat.
Yeah, that's
May go ahead.
unanimous, 4 votes for.
Okay.